Hello and welcome to another episode of Gifting the Dockside. Welcome back, Sydney.
Hi, Sebastian. Another episode of pathspec.
Yes, maybe the last one, so I heard. So
We'll see.
from the previous session, I mean, we can just go through it point by point. Unless you have some sort of guidance for me, then we can go there right away.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing on there that was my focus really for the last week. Sorry, there's one thing not on there that was my focus, which is the escaping.
Yeah.
And that, I think it's a checkbox at the top, but yeah, that's basically now implemented. And I think it should be only in one place. There's a function basically that just unescapes the values. And it works. Not this one. It's
split unescape char.
Unescape attribute values.
Oh, that's interesting. Split unescape char. So that's also new, I think, is it?
That was there a couple of commits ago already.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And you said, I think on that one you said I should try to use find byte set or something like that, which I did try and it didn't really work. So it stayed the same.
Yes. Fair enough. Looks, I mean, we probably get there or not, but looks relatively simple. And this is it. Everything else is really just very nitpicky, and we can go there, but we don't have to. So here it is. Unescape attribute values input into. Oh yeah, that's probably going to be a B string then. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. So that just takes the inputs and does some very rudimentary parsing just to find out where the value and the name and the value is. And if certain conditions apply, then unescape the attribute values and give them back. So yeah, it's this extra parsing step before the actual parsing.
Wow. So you're all into super functional now, and I understand why. Like, I've written my fair share of code with this outer okay, but now my immediate intuition is to pull that out. Oh, actually, yeah, okay, that's not the one. Thank you, IntelliJ, for not helping me so much, but maybe I have to scroll down and then I see, okay, this is the one. So that's a vec of things. And there can be errors here. And this is why we collect into this. And then we join later. Yeah. But that looks, that looks more graspable. And this is a vec. This is probably, what is it? Unescape attribute. Oh. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically creating a new string in the end, because that's, I think, what has to happen.
Yeah.
And this is a vec of U8s then.
Yes. Interestingly, it's a space separated string, huh?
Yes, exactly. The attributes come in space separated in the pathspec.
So, you know what this reminds me of? JavaScript, somehow. It's like, it's super common to have an array of things and then you join that, or, you run certain operations on it. And I understand why, and it makes sense, and it works, but independently of how it's done, here, what I don't like about it, and that's borderline nitpicky, but it's also kind of maybe having high standards for quality and measuring yourself on Git, which also kind of, the thing is, what happens if the input doesn't need any unescaping, which probably is not the common case anyway. We're talking about a feature which probably is used by 0.05% of the people, so I try to keep that in mind. because really, who does who uses pathspecs that way? Probably only the ultra experts, right? Like, I didn't even know this existed until I had to implement it, or I dug in now. That said, I'm happily being practical, especially given that tomorrow is a new month and a new how do you call it, phase for Git Oxide. So
new goal.
I'm happy to, but that's just my train of thought here. So why allocate? Why do all this work if there's nothing to do, right?
Yeah.
And in Rust, you just wouldn't necessarily do it that way by default. And Git, I think, also maybe doesn't do it, but we check. If Git doesn't do it differently, then we do it. Lastly, you would probably also kind of, just as a general thing, like I don't want to say you or one in like Rust people would not, because I really don't know, but I would not build a vec out of stuff and then join it later, just out of principle, like no, because then I don't even know if it's the worst thing to do in the world. It's more like, it seems like just unnecessary allocations. And if I do something, then I have in my extra buffer, it's a string, and I push stuff onto that string and build a new string.
Yeah.
Like this vec of slices, it seems something I don't do in Rust ever. But it's something you do in Python or JavaScript for sure, obviously. Oh, yeah. So here's another to own mixed in. So this value is then probably a B string or vec of U8s.
That's a vec of U8s, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Not too bad, my in-brain type inference here, which is based on a few hints that I get from IntelliJ. Not too bad. But this is where it stops, like now you have a vec that is your tokens, and it's a vec of like it seems like a vectors of vectors even. And then there's own strings in there. So that's definitely a bit too crazy. And probably makes things harder for you than they have to be by doing it that way. And like, I can hardly imagine that Git does it that quote unquote
Theirs is
badly.
much shorter.
Yes, like Git probably doesn't do it because this means so many allocations. I mean, C people, they kind of feel the pain of allocation because they have to deallocate, right? So they really don't usually do it. So I can imagine that Git uses the string buffer a lot.
It's around line 150.
Yes.
I'm not too sure what they're doing there.
Yeah. Okay. These people. Yeah. So what they do is they locate a new string with the maximum size of the current value, because they know the output value is going to be shorter or at worst the same size, right? Because you take out the escape characters for sure. And this is what you know. And so they locate once and then they basically build a new string. And you see like this C code, except for like you need a bit of intuition for what happens here, like this pointer magic stuff. It's not even magic, but it's exactly, it's, I can read it and you can read it too, probably. And it just says, if we have an escape or a backslash here, and this is not the end of the string, then just skip the backslash and check then the next character and see if it's a valid value char. This is something that probably Git attributes crate should be able to do for you or something like that, but maybe.
This is custom for pathspec, I think.
Okay, then this is easy. And then it just copies it. And what I like about this code, I mean, you know what I'm going to say, right? Like complexity wise,
Yeah.
it's like I don't even want to look at this into detail because I think it's kind of it's not, you know.
So I think what it comes down to is I wasn't sure how to, basically I'm taking in, a reference to a B string. And I wasn't sure how to build a new string from that. And I thought, okay, somewhere in there, I definitely have to allocate. And I basically just, try to go through that idea. And that's what I ended up with. I know
Yes.
it's super complicated, but I wasn't really able to make this more simple with this way, at least.
Yes. So to be a bit less, we never started off that critical. And probably that's the most critical thing I've ever said to you. So apologies for that. But it's I find it interesting just from a it's a cultural thing maybe, and I find it interesting from the perspective of starting off the wrong foot, and then your house looks a bit strange and you don't want to live there really, and it's probably best to just tear it down, which it wants to do anyway. Just take out this one stone, it crashes over, and then you start over. And maybe try to do it like Git, because Git shows you it's not really smart about this. It doesn't really care about much, and you can do better because Git always allocates. Whereas in Rust, it's easy not to always allocate. And that could be a second step. For first step, you could just do this. In goes something that is borrowed, and out comes always a potentially changed B string. It might just be a copy of this if nothing needs to be unescaped. And that's a start. And you can, probably just implement it byte by byte like it's implemented in Git, and it should work that way. This is valid. Is this validation check error value? That's this one. Oh, yeah. And that does it differently. It looks for. It's interesting. This is a Clippy lint, maybe. Is this something that Clippy detects? Oh, I did break it. Really? Did I change something here? Well,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I also don't think so. What? No, wait, maybe something very strange happened there for a moment. Now it seems to be working. For the time being, anyway. Yeah, so Clippy does not have a problem. Yeah, and now I get use find because then the invalid char is also presented here.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is why Clippy does like it. Yeah, okay. Now I get it, because you actually use the result. Okay. And that is supposed to be basically this invalid char.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of these. And this is spread out here. Have you tried something like this? Having a B string and then contains a binary string?
No, I haven't. Definitely haven't.
Does that work? Oh, I know the comma I have. Dash underscore comma. Okay.
I think you might have to invert it.
Yeah, it's not that, or... Oh, wait. logic.
Not that and not that, yeah.
So does not contain. Okay, that's great. Tests fail. Okay. And then we convert that into an error. Okay, cool. It's more like, yeah, no, it's good enough. I was thinking maybe turn this, like I have an easier time not inverting things. So
I know.
valid char
I
and
started
then
off that way, but it's, with the closure, I can't easily invert that. So yeah, it's a bit backwards, I know.
Yeah, I mean, unless you do an actual closure, right? Like having it like this is something you rarely see because that really requires you to have a closure, the right closure. But having it like this, and then, and I don't say it's better. It's just something I would find like interesting to explore to see if that makes it easier. So it's this or this.
Yeah.
And then see if it's not a valid char. And that has a bit less negation going on. Because now it puts the negation kind of in a more manageable position. And I think I like that. Along with this, giving full praise and credit to Git, which does it exactly the same. Except that comma dash underscore is first, probably in order of probability. Like this. Okay, and we do the same so that we are not slower there. Okay, so what exactly is hogging on my CPU here? Okay, OBS is hotter than usual. I don't hear my fan spinning that loud usually. It's not nice anymore. Fine. So I think we just note this down as something to fix, because I think it's also an experience. It's not a problem to have done it like this. It just nicely shows you how things can go off the wrong way. Yeah. Also, I find it commendable that you pushed through, but also think next time don't push through. Just say this should be simpler, especially since you also looked at the Git code and you saw that this is preferable, despite the pointer magic not being preferable ever. But the Rust version of that should be safe, should just be an iterator over bytes, and that makes it fairly manageable. And the next step then, if you get to it, doesn't necessarily have to be, but I sure would appreciate it, is this. And to know, like to do this would mean that you check in advance if there's anything to unescape. So you'll probably find a backslash first, and if you found one, do create a new string that is an allocation and then do it like it does. But if you didn't find one, then you can just have a borrowed cow of the input and not do anything. And that saves an allocation, and I think that is what I would put some CPU cycles in, just to save that allocation, which otherwise is unnecessary. And it's over optimization, right? Like this allocation saved, nobody will ever notice that. I really think that. So this means that if the code gets more complex, then maybe we don't do it, also since Git doesn't do it. But I'm just, so take this with a grain of salt. If you really feel it strongly, do it. Otherwise, don't. Really, this is nothing that I find super important here.
No, but I think this is a good opportunity to learn, because this should be simple enough. And I know that already just looking at that I don't fully understand how this would work. And I think it's really worth exploring that, because, to not produce this kind of code and just be a little bit more optimized the next time, I think this is very useful.
Yes, but also complexity, like do the B string first, don't do the cow first. and then do the minimal version and allow yourself to go back to that, because I think it will be less complex, easier to use, and that's overall preferable with this, you know, I think. This is so far the most, or the most complex, hardest to understand function. And we want less of that. In an ocean of small, quite easy to understand functions, you know, and it's a nice contrast. So it's the first time when it didn't really work, that initial step, so to say. But it's cool, even for that reason, huh? Everybody, it's, you know, had to happen at some point. I'm happy it happens now.
Exactly. Learning opportunity, right?
Yes. Also shows me that you are merely a human, which is good to have confirmation for, because so far it went pretty smoothly.
Smooth.
All right, cool. Then this is the escaping. Let's go back to where it's called. We just unescape it, then we work on the unescaped like before, and nothing new.
Yeah, nothing really changed here. I just added a bunch of tests to make sure this is tested for. So yeah, should be easier to refactor this now.
I see these. So get attribute still wasn't touched, huh?
It was. We can get to that next.
Okay, so it didn't work out like it could have. Okay, or maybe it couldn't. That's the point. Okay, could the attribute name use the same idea? Use in full. Yeah, okay, that's all related to get attributes now, huh? So I guess.
Yes.
Let me make a commit real quick, and then we continue. Thanks. All right, commit done, and now back to, yeah, get attributes. Where should I go next?
Yes, so let's look at the full name implementation, or attribute name. I tried to get that going, basically.
Oh yeah, here. Cool.
Yeah.
Attribute name,
so
attribute name refs.
Instead of returning this tuple pair, yeah, it just now makes its own type out of it that can only be created by this crate. And yeah, everything else should then be implemented over the functions. So I haven't implemented a lot, just the ones that are necessary for, you know, the stuff that is being used for now. But yeah, so far it works.
Here we have some conversions. I was trying to look at, you know, access functions to see where we can, how we can access the state, for example.
I'm not even sure this actually exists at the moment.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't because all the tests, yeah, I don't know. Doesn't have to exist now if nobody needs it. I was just thinking that it obviously needs to be there.
Yeah, at some point you will have to use this somehow. And I think the only thing I've implemented now is these conversions from, yeah, like you can convert this into a vector or into a tuple, I think. So yeah, from that back into a tuple, and then you can access it like normal. But I guess that depends on how it wants to be used.
Is this used anywhere?
This is used in the tests for sure, and I think even in the pathspec file. So let me double check.
Yeah, no, I just delete it and then we see. All right, so just one. So I deleted two of these. Maybe I don't delete them, but start to.
Yeah, the first one is definitely used in the pathspec file.
Maybe it's used elsewhere. Attributes, pathspec. Okay. So into item map. So with this into, you know, I mean, I've done my fair share of these, and usually I implement them. But I also, I mean, the thing is with the tuple, this is so hardcore because you have to know so much. Like these from and to, like from implementations, they're so opaque. There's just secret knowledge, it's just something you try out. And, having a ref and turning a ref into an attribute name, that's something people might try, but I can't see anybody turning this into a tuple, and it's something you needed specifically, or it felt good, but it's an API that is impossible to explore. So if these things are there, I usually don't do it for tuple thingies because they're so, like, you can hardly type that. You have to know a lot. It's so specific. So I would rather remove these and ask myself how I want to access this, or what, like, do I want to access this with accessors, or maybe it's the right way to do it, it's just my intuition now without having seen much how it's used. But these into,
no, that makes a lot of sense, of course. Yeah, now to think about it, actually, because it was, again, just this what was already there, especially in the tests, and without having wanting to rewrite a bunch, I just said, okay, I need to use this type now. But obviously, this is how you would want to access it. So you would want to give them more specific names, so you would want to just type it out, basically.
Yes. And for the tests, it's probably nice and simple. I mean, let's see. We have attribute name. So here we want to turn things into a tuple. And in this, we want to turn things into a tuple 2. I think there was the owned and the non-owned version, huh? Yeah. So exactly. always into tuple. And this is what was needed here because it was returning a... Oh, that's interesting. So it turns it into a tuple, and then...
Yeah, it's this expanded attribute that you were using there.
And this is another type def of a tuple of stuff.
A big tuple. Yeah.
You really did make it work, huh? Because now this would be an attribute ref, attribute name ref. Like now there's a type for it, right?
Yes.
Or is it different?
Exactly. No, this is exactly the type, but I can't create it outside of the crate, so I need to convert it back into the tuple. Because that's the point behind the whole thing, right? So it's kind of locked into the crate that you can create these things.
Yes, but you already have an attribute here, no? I thought you do. I mean, this gives you adders because this is an iterator over attributes, parse iter. This
gives you the attribute name ref.
Yes. And then this is just collected, like there's no need to convert this. This is just collected into a vec now, and errors are discarded. This is the purpose. So now...
okay.
Expand it like this. You should be able to use it here, of course, because you don't actually do anything.
What might have happened is I realized that I would have to change a lot in the way how it's checked. I would have to change the entire test suite basically to adjust for that. And I wasn't even sure if this, this whole idea works. So I thought, let's just keep it light and simple for now.
Yes.
But yeah, that would be the thing to do.
Yes. But that's, I also like it, by the way, that you kind of do this minimal step. And then we can stumble a bit and say, like, this isn't what you would want. You want now that attribute ref everywhere, and then you have to deal with not being able to access fields that easily anymore, which was maybe like a comfort that was possible, but now it's not anymore, and we have to deal with it. I mean, it's just not, right? This goes against that new system. Being able to turn it into a tuple, is something that potentially can stay in some way, maybe with just giving a nice method name that is discoverable. Why not? Like, yeah, into parts. There's these standard method names. Into parts is one of them, and that kind of makes sense to give it return a tuple then. And that's something I would probably prefer instead of this from implementation.
Yeah.
And I guess this is something we can now adjust. So we started new session notes here. I didn't unpause when I should have, and realized that we have to put in work for getting this attribute type out of the tuple zone. It still wants to be more like a tuple right now because that's easier, but we can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now the next one, the parsing error and its distinction.
Yes, so that's something I tried, and I basically went down the rabbit hole as well.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I wasn't sure if that was even the right approach that I was taking. So yeah, I didn't push anything in that regard, but I can show you really quickly what I did try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I converted the errors from quick error to this error.
Do you want to share? Oh no, wait.
I don't have the code anymore.
Okay.
I literally threw it away.
Okay.
It was just an idea that I want to talk to you about here.
Oh, I'm so lost.
Easier, I can.
Somewhere here must be this iterator for attributes. Why don't I find it anymore? Parse.
It is. Let me check quickly.
Here. Here it is.
Yes.
And here it just returns this error. Here's the error. Okay. Attribute name. Here. So yeah.
And
quick error to this error. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is essentially create one distinct error that just handles the attribute name, and then kind of use that where it's necessary, and then convert that where you need that conversion. But I ended up with two attribute name errors. So one that's in here because I needed to convert it back, and one that is distinct for this iterator only, basically. And yeah, I tried to adjust it everywhere in the code, but it felt, I don't know, at some point I just thought this feels very wrong. Maybe this is the wrong approach.
Okay. And that can make sense. And sometimes, I mean, I was lazy enough not to create a new error here. And there surely is that's really exactly the reason. I thought it should be okay, and who checks these errors anyway? And I mean, we already do it. We check the errors and we kind of rely on intrinsic knowledge and how this is set up. And that's why we're here. Can we make this easier to check? So here's the iterator. Let's see where, where does it bail out? Only here. So only check error.
Only here.
Oh. Mm-hmm. And it only produces this single one. This is the one you took out, you extracted into its own error. I mean, the benefit of this is that this error would really just be a single field error. You can do that in this error. So this is an get attribute error? No. Here it's a get attributes parse error. I was now thinking of a name, like how would this new error be called? Did you find a name for that?
I called it, it wasn't a good name just for testing, but I just called it an attribute name error because that's essentially what it is. It's just not a very good name in the context.
Get attribute parse get attribute name error. Like, so the cool thing is in future, okay, it gets interesting. I'm getting there. So here, now we have attribute name in the top level, huh? So we have get attributes, attribute name, and attribute name ref. So let's see how this, oh no, that's the wrong crate. So get attributes name and name ref. So I would probably remove this attribute prefix because I take the crate name as, you know, context. And I think in getref, we have getref full name and partial name. And we only have this distinction because there are two different versions of it. And maybe in future, this will even be, you know, getref name. So instead of full name, just call it name because maybe that's the identifier, it's the name. And we assume it's unique, and the partial name, that's the special one maybe, you know, so that this gets a bit less cluttered even. This is my tendency there. So I might not start with the final name, but here, this is why I'm thinking here, get attributes name is fine because there's definitely only one, nothing to think about. And now that we have this, how do we create it? And what happens if we do? So now I would assume that we have a good attributes name error. And this is produced when we create one from scratch by just giving it, I don't know, something to parse our string.
Yeah, very true.
This get attributes name error is something we can stuff into that particular field there that is currently its own type thing. And then it would come together for me. And that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you see, all I do is I use CargoDoc to see the context and the structure of the crate a bit better. Because it's definitely not just a parse error. Which reminds, yeah, here's the parse module, and here do we have the parse error. Yeah. So yeah, good attributes parse kind. That's interesting. What kind of name is that? Oh yeah. So very short names. But when you look into it, you know, it still kind of makes sense. So it's okay. Still. Okay. So maybe we do that refactoring right away because that should be fully automatic. And name ref. And then here, I am totally okay. Where's the modules? On the bottom here. Okay. Mod name. And then pubstruct name error. So name error looks good enough now because we probably know there's not going to be much more about it. This can quickly be ambiguous if there's more, right? But for now, it seems fine. Yeah. If it's too ambiguous, just make another module for name init error, name validation. Yeah, I don't usually use nouns like this, validation error. I don't usually do it, I think. So I call it init or something, so it's a bit shorter. But here now, this is unique enough. Derive this error. How was it? This error? Error, right. And the cool thing is you can do that. You can have these single field errors. And now we just have So the cool thing is attribute parsing doesn't even know line numbers, I think. It's
Yes and no. I mean, it does, but it can be pulled out of it. And I think it probably should as well.
Right. This line number is passed down, right? This is why.
Yeah. And the iterator knows about it. Which
yes.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. You can still build this bigger error. And we just want to pull out that, also we ignore the line number entirely. So I think that's the way. We just take that out and say, if I ever find that error again, so we just call it attribute here. Attribute name. Oh, it's interesting. Macro inline. Is that a...
Oh, no, it's the one above.
That's a low blow for me. Yeah, what happened there? Jeez, I was really misaligned. It's this formatting. Usually it's in line here, and that's easier. Like, look, it doesn't automatically format it. I don't know what happened there. And now IntelliJ is going not super slow. Oh yeah, when there's this bubble here, then it gets super slow. Oh man. Okay. So I think that was my editor doing something wrong.
Okay, yeah, for me it's definitely in one line here.
But now there's parsing errors. Now Rust FMT has issues.
I know that sometimes for me also whenever I get too deep into macros, the formatter often gives up.
For me, this is new that it kind of has, but maybe it's just a kind of buggy release or something, and it's a bit worse than it usually is. Okay, now I can read this again, and probably should keep it that way. Okay, so we call this attribute. And it's a B string. And we can put this here. Attribute has non-ASCII characters or starts with. We just put attribute here. I wonder, does this work by now? Oh yeah. And look at that, that actually does work. So the syntax I think was maybe old, and now everything evolved, and now you can do this. Oh, okay, that's much better.
That's nicer, yeah.
Ah, okay, cool. Let's do this from now on. Yeah, maybe that's definitely something to do here. Look at this. It's beautiful. Maybe the formatter doesn't want to format stuff anymore now that the line is shorter. Even though Rust FMT still has issues. Line number, attribute. I don't want to do too much here. It's super slow now. It's just crazy.
Weird.
Macro name. And that's it. Okay, I'm not gonna put that in now because then everything fails, but we can keep this as a hint on where to go, maybe. And that should be fine.
And just to be clear, we do keep the old error, right? So we convert back to the old attribute name error when we need to, or should they be completely distinct?
Is there an old attribute error?
Sorry, the attribute name that you just copied from, basically.
Yeah.
This one. because I think there is a point somewhere where, you know, some function where we produce both errors and we need to, how do you say, like converge on one error type.
Yes. I mean, this is still like the top level. So the cool thing is the iterator now wouldn't need to return this top level error anymore. It now can just use this specific error. And then the iterator that calls it, doesn't have to do anything. It's all now pushed to the caller, who then deals with these attributes and the iterator over the attributes. And the disadvantage, there's one disadvantage now, which is that this attribute name error goes away entirely, technically. And this also means that the line number goes away entirely. I think. Maybe I'm wrong about this. But here we use it twice. Yeah, so that's the... This is where an attribute name error is turned into a macro name error. Which again... And this is for parse line. So I do have the feeling that this really should or must be. It must be create name error. But this also means we have to give it a line number. Otherwise we can't really do it here. But maybe we don't. Maybe it gets much better if you don't do anything here. This line number is only used for the error case anyway, which is a smell. So check error. Yeah,
no, but
here it's not needed.
You don't need to give it a line number, right? Yeah, exactly.
Here it's not needed. Here the line number is known by the caller. And here, parse error.
Yeah, here I just pass in something, I think. If that's, I don't know.
Self line number. So here but here there could be an error conversion. So here, I think here it comes down to, does this top level iterator still want to return this error? Because the line number is lost then. Is it? Where's this iterator created? So each item has its own,
Each line has its own iterator, right? Yeah.
This is the line number, I think, huh? Is that the line number? These tuples, huh? They're not super awesome.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about code, at least. So, on the record, now that we're here, I think it's clear that the line number is present. Iterator doesn't want to know the line number, but it had to previously to create that error. And I think this should just go away. Iterator should just return the standard simple error that we just created. And then, since the line number is known, people can do with that what they want, as they wish. And check error doesn't have a line number anymore for that reason. Yeah, that should work. Good attributes, pathspecs still compiling, still working, still works great. Okay, on record we created a commit, and I think it's clear now that yes, we still you still want that.
Yeah.
And it should work if iter new does not have the line number anymore. Yeah. Yeah. And then it comes together, I think.
Cool.
And then we can be safe. It's just the attribute name. And that's quite some work. But I think it's more on the lines of busy work. Oh yeah, and lastly...
Yeah, it's just going through
yes.
other messages then.
Yes, it's refactoring. And honestly, I find that very, how do you call it?
Relaxing.
Relaxing, yeah. And you get work done, you know it's going to be easy. It's like, oh yeah, cool. I don't have to think too much, but yeah, stay alert nonetheless.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, that's what I did because it was really just, handling one error message after the other. But at some point I just stopped and I thought, okay, this feels like, I don't know, this feels maybe a bit too far-fetched, everything.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good to have confirmation.
Yes. And trust your, it's great. Trust your intuition on this. I do appreciate it. And I think that should be the way. Don't waste your time on stuff that seems unnecessary. One more thing I wanted to note down. I mentioned it earlier, the first thing. What was that again? Yeah. Rewrite escaping. Or? Rewrite escaping. Once more. With feeling or something. It's this awesome Buffy. It's this Buffy episode that I try to reference here. And it's I don't watch Buffy, but there's these 2 episodes, Once More with Feeling, and the one where they sing, where they can only sing, I think, because of some demon, whatever. That was also super awesome. So these 2, great entertainment. All right. So I think that's the session. I mean, we already...
If I may, I have one more quick question, and that's related to, because I keep checking the Git's errors, and there are some errors in there that are related to globals or, global configuration of path specs. We don't have that at all in Git Oxide, right? Or does that somehow need to be handled?
Path spec tests. So can you guide me to...
Yes. So if you check the C implementation, and basically just look for die, there are some instances of errors. It's a bit further down. Let me check.
Yeah. I mean, look, even here in unescaping, right? It can die. There's a bunch of places where it can abort, but maybe you covered these already as errors. Further down.
Yes, exactly. I tried to cover all of those, basically, like the ones that make sense at least. But yeah, here line 279, there is one that is related to get global. That's like tongue twisters. But yeah, I think these are related to like global path spec settings. Yes, question mark.
Get global magic. And it calls this when parsing. Oh yeah, right. It's here we have some magic that we parsed, I suppose, huh? Yeah, here we parse it, and then we get some global magic that we put on top. And it comes from environment variables and maybe config. No, just environment variables. That's cool. Yeah, great question. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, technically we do need to handle these, right? This kind of has to be in there.
Where do you think this would go? I mean, Git does it during parsing, huh? And this means every time Look, but it's just the first time it parses something. It reads this once. This is static int, so it's kind of caching it. It caches the value. So it doesn't pay for this all the time. But yeah, it does access it nonetheless. Git glob pathspecs. It's cool. Like these things, all the stuff that they put in there. Geez, somebody must have wanted it badly 5 years ago. Probably it makes total sense. I can't judge. It's just like, thank you for making it so complicated to implement.
Just one little bit more complicated.
Yes.
So that means for each parsing operation, basically, or for each input string, we have to read those globals once coming from environment variables?
No, I mean, definitely not. Like, not what Git does. Git also isn't super inefficient by doing it each time. They cache stuff. They do this all the time with statics. Not the first time I've seen this. But it's nothing, we can't have side effects. You can't read environment variables. You can't access git config. It's a pure function, and that's what it has to stay. Thus, global stuff goes elsewhere. Think about it like this. It's just some bit flags that are ORed on top of the parse magic. Before the magic is used for matching, I presume, because matching is what ultimately should be done with a path spec. So the one who's matching has to get some global path specs, and that one would probably only, have some option that is some path spec magic signature that is an optional, or it can be null or zero, can be empty. And we don't care where it comes from. And then Git repository at some point gets these globals based on what gitsec allows it to access and passes it down. Like, this is how I do things right now. And since it's environment variables, we can always consider like having some utility in the crate itself, in Git path spec, that knows these environment variables and makes a signature from that. And people can call it, and probably we will do something like this. So it's easy we compartmentalize the knowledge about path specs in the respective crate, but it's something you have to call to get it. And then Git repository calls this and calls it a day. Something like that.
But shouldn't then for example, you said that should happen on matching level, which really makes sense. But my question is, shouldn't then the parse function of pathspec just take an optional value, basically, that just either has a global thing or it doesn't, but it kind of already mashes that in with the parsing step, and then it's done.
But it's just ORing a value, and the one who says parse this will get a path spec, and the path spec you can already change. Like, they can decide what to do with that. Like, these path specs, they're parsed at some point, and then like all this, bringing it all together, this happens probably in Git repository with some help of the respective function in Git path spec or Git path or wherever. And where it is, I don't know. I don't worry about it. I just know it's not happening during parsing, because there's no there's no benefit for me to pass in an additional signature, magic signature, that it then just ORs. Like, I can do that too, and you don't have to do this during parsing just because Git does it. It's like Git is spaghetti when it comes to that, and we try not to be spaghetti and just do one thing at a time. And but yeah, good catch, by the way. Great catch. So
forget about globals, but don't forget about globals.
Yes, that's the answer. Very nice. All this talk for this very non-ambiguous, I don't know, outcome, maybe. Yeah, looks good. I guess the matching happens here, but I don't want to think about matching. Oh, matching. Another day. Now we do parsing. Yeah, cool. And I think that's then it for today, and we should be very close to merging this then. Really, really, really close.
And excited.
didn't take you know, didn't look too much here at the test, but I think last time we did, so not much probably changed or had to change, except for escaping.
Yeah, just a few additional ones, exactly.
Yeah, but let's look at it another time, 1 hour in. I think that's a good time to say thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.